It's not Britain's reservoirs or rivers that are breaching European regulations on nitrate pollution. Nor is it farm slurry escaping into ditches and streams that is causing the main difficulties. It's the fertilizers that reach water underground. That's because in many parts of England, particularly in the east, water supplies are drawn from water-bearing rock deep under the earth. Already, many underground water sources are badly affected by nitrate pollution. Now, 10 special studies of these groundwater areas are being considered by a cabinet committee. 2 in East Anglia, 2 south of Lincoln, a single borehole and a wider catchment area around it, 4 in central England, in Sherwood Forest, near Lichfield, near Wolverhampton and near Stoke-on-Trent, 1 in the Cotswolds and 1 in East Kent. Broadly, the studies confirm that under much of Britain's land, nitrate pollution in groundwater is near or over the European limit and rising. In a few places, it'll reach 3 times the limit by the end of the century if nothing's done.
In many areas in East Anglia and also in the Midlands area, which we're responsible for in Severn Trent, many groundwater sources would exceed the specified standards. So therefore there must be something done, otherwise we can't comply with our requirements.
The standard set by the European Community is 50 parts of nitrate per million parts of water, close to the standard set by the World Health Authority. Nitrates can cause stomach cancers in animals and blue baby syndrome in bottle-fed babies, particularly in poor, hot countries with bacteria in the water. But many scientists, including the government's own, are not really convinced that the limit as low as 50 parts per million is necessary.
There is no evidence that 50 parts per million is of any substantial benefit in comparison to the old level of 100 parts per million. The whole argument about nitrate pollution and both cancer and the blue baby syndrome is really based on exposures to nitrate in drinking water that are usually substantially above 100 parts per million. The evidence that exposure at levels above 50 parts per million but below 100 is very fragmentary, and some of it is rather unsound, scientifically speaking.
The Friends of the Earth do not agree. It was their complaint that prompted the European Commission to begin legal proceedings against the British government for breaking the law by relaxing pollution standards locally.
One must, in this kind of area, when one's dealing with something as vital as drinking water, adopt a precautionary approach. Now, the evidence as to the health risks of nitrate in drinking water, especially when it comes to possible cancers, is inconclusive. But in the face of uncertainty, it is better to be safe now than sorry later.
There are 2 fundamental approaches to reducing nitrates in water. The first is by chemical treatment. Pilot studies have shown that the European standard could be met by treating water underground as it's extracted. But it'll cost £200 million over the next 20 years. After privatisation of the water industry, who will pay?
Well, ultimately, of course, the consumer is going to pay for it. It will be added to the water bills. I think with privatisation, they will then be much freer than they are at the moment to borrow on the open market. And then it's merely a question of servicing a loan, and the impact of that will be far less.
But water treatment will probably have to be combined with changes in farming. Farmers are now using 25 times as much nitrate as 50 years ago, and despite good husbandry, much of it leaches into the water, though indirectly. Many people believe that to forestall future trouble, farmers should simply use less nitrate. To reduce nitrate pollution of groundwater over the next 30 years to meet the European limit, nitrate leaching from the soil must be less than 20 kilograms per hectare per year. However, cereals and intensively cultivated grass leach about 70 kilograms a year, and ploughing up old grassland can release 500 kilograms. Only the radical solution of maintaining permanent grass or broadleaf trees brings the leaching down to 10 kilograms. One solution being considered is water protection zones, where intensive cereal production would be forbidden and farmers compensated in some as yet unspecified way. This farm near Cambridge is a likely candidate for inclusion in such a zone. Sidney Taylor's family has been farming in the neighbourhood for nearly 100 years. Using modern techniques, he puts a ton bag of nitrate fertiliser on every 6 acres of cereals. If farmers like him had to turn their land into permanent pasture with only a couple of sheep to the acre, what effect would that have?
I think there will be a lot of farmers who will probably go out of business. If the measures were draconian, we've now had 3 poor and average years, and I don't think farmers could take much more.
The trouble is that in eastern England there's less rain than in the rest of the country, and catchment areas for groundwater boreholes are relatively large. Over the water-bearing rocks, substantial areas might have to be taken out of intensive cultivation. One water authority estimate is that 2,000 square kilometres might have to be turned into water protection zones.
The eastern counties are the breadbasket of England, and we need this land for producing food. And the cost of setting aside such a large area can't be thought of.
Is this a crisis or is it an opportunity? We think the latter. We now recognise that in the UK we produce annually about 6 million tonnes of cereals, surplus to requirements. There is increasing pressure for organic food, for environmentally friendly farming. What we're keen to see is the de-intensification of agriculture, a reduction of the use of chemicals, including artificial fertilizers, to achieve environmental gains, to protect the livelihoods of farmers, and, vitally, to protect the quality of our drinking water supplies. So the crisis is, in fact, a golden opportunity to get farmers off the chemical treadmill.
At the moment, the government is costing different ways of modifying farmers' practices to meet the European nitrate standard for water. However it's done, it'll be expensive. But in political terms, if Mrs. Thatcher's recent pronouncements on the environment are anything to go by, she may turn out to be a powerful ally of the green cause.